everyone! Today I'm going to be doing a story time of how I failed my driving exam. So I need to tell this whole story, like my whole driving story from start to finish because I've had so many problems with driving. I don't know why. Don't tell me it's because I'm blonde. I think there has to be another explanation but that. But I have to tell you the whole story from beginning to finish because you guys are literally going to think that I'm stupid if you hear just why I failed. So, to learn the driving rules, like I don't know how it works in other states, but in California, you have to take your permit exam first and then your actual driving exam. So, So what I did was, like, you can either take an online class or a physical class, and my school actually offered physical, like, classes for driver's ed. And so these are just, like, the rules of the road, the rules of driving, things like that, but it's more like, when do you turn left? When do you turn right? Like, what do you do when there's a red light? Blah, blah, blah. And there's some rules there that are really, really weird, and I can't remember which ones they are, but they're just like, why would I need to know that? Like, when would I use that? But anyways, so I took the one in person, and the reason that I did that over an online one was because I knew that if I took it online, I just wouldn't take it seriously and I wouldn't care. And so my teacher ended up being really mean to me all the time. He was always super rude, and I just never really paid attention in his class because he would always go off on tangents, and anybody else who took that class knows exactly what I'm talking about. He would always go off on tangents, like talking about his childhood, and the class was 2 hours long, and it was after school, and it was on 2 days of the week, and I had a lot of homework. This was during my sophomore year, and so I would, like, do my homework and he would ask me to not do it, and so I would stop doing it, but then I'd go back to doing it, especially when he'd go off on a half-an-hour tangent about his childhood. Like, what, like, that's not, I'm not learning from that. So I would do my homework during his class. He didn't like that, but initially, from the very beginning, before I even started doing my homework in his class, he was always so rude to me for no reason. Like, what did I do? Okay, so basically, he didn't really teach us anything. I knew more about his life than I did the rules of the road. And so he gives us this first test. It's like a pop quiz, and half the class fails, and this guy is like, if you failed, you now have to sit at the front of the classroom. And he, like, assigned seats, and before the seats weren't assigned and we could sit wherever we want, I sat in the back with, like, a few of my friends, and so now I have to sit at the front with weird people who keep talking for the entire class. And so I'm sitting there, and I noticed that, so the class ends, and then it's like the next day of the class. And so I come back to the next day of the class, and no one is sitting in the seats that he assigned to us. So I thought, since no one is sitting in their assigned seats, and he doesn't seem to have a problem with that, I'm gonna go back to sitting with my friends. And so he asks me to move to my assigned seat. And so I said that, well, why isn't anybody else who has an assigned seat? Why is no one else sitting in their assigned seats? And he wouldn't provide me with a reason, and I found that to be unacceptable. And so I said that I don't want to sit there, and that you can't make me sit there if you don't provide me with a sufficient enough reason of why you're making me sit there and not anyone else. And basically just escalated, and I just found it to be really unfair, because why are you making me sit somewhere that I don't want to sit when you're not making anybody else sit there? And I was like, okay, like, for example, this girl, this guy, this person, they're all sitting in the seats that they want to sit in, even though they had assigned seats last time. Why aren't you making them move? So he can't provide me with a good enough reason, because obviously he's not going to say out loud that he just doesn't like me for some weird reason. And so he's like, I can't start the class if you don't sit in your seat, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, and I was this close to saying, okay, then don't start your class. Because I found that to be so unfair and just so rude and disrespectful. And initially, I started the argument or conversation very civilly. I was very kind, and I just tried to ask why he's making me move when he's not making anybody else move. and he just made it escalate into this big thing. And I said, okay, fine, I'll move to that assigned seat. And so from then on, I continued to be respectful, and I just tried to make the best of the time that I had left in that horrible, horrible class. But I just feel like I didn't really learn that much. I had to learn the majority of the material from the booklet and from online tests. So we take our last test. I get 100% on that test, and then I have to go to the DMV to take my permit test, which is the one that you take on the computer. And for some reason, I don't know why they do this, but the DMV basically only works when you're at school. So I had to make my mom take time off work so that she can take me to the DMV to take my test. And so in my head, I'm like, I can only take this test once, because if I fail, she's gonna kill me, because that means that I have to take more time off of school. My mom has to take more time off of work. It's just so inconvenient for everyone in my family. So I was stressing myself out so much over this permit test. And so I get to the DMV. It's so scary. The DMV is the most terrifying place ever. Why do they make it so terrifying? The people are so emotionless and so mean. Why? I'm not saying that everyone is like that, but a lot of the people that I have talked to at the DMV are like that. So, anyways, I'm at the DMV. I take my permit test, and I just keep getting so many of them wrong. I'm like, okay, at this point, I know that I failed, and I start praying. I'm like, dear Lord, please let me pass this test, because my mom, she's gonna kill me. She's gonna think that I'm stupid. And I'm basically hyperventilating. I'm praying to God that I pass this test. I'm already imagining my mom yelling at me, being like, oh my God, stupid people pass this test, and you can't pass this test. Now I have to take time off work and take you. And I just keep envisioning these scenes happening in my head. And so I get through the rest of the test. I passed with the maximum amount of mistakes that you can make. And so in my head I'm thinking, okay, well, I passed. This was the hard part. This is the part that you actually need to memorize the rules. And I get my permit. And so that means, if you don't know what a permit is basically when if you're a certain age and you pass the driver's ed and you pass your permit test, which is the rules of the road, you get a permit. So that means that you can drive with adults that are 25 years or older, I believe, and have a driver's license. And so that basically means you can drive with your parents and a driving instructor. So a couple months after that, I started driving around with my parents, I think, a couple times, and then my parents were like, you know what, this isn't a natural ability that we think that you're gonna have, so we are getting you a driving instructor. So my parents got me a driving instructor. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Russian parents really love it when their kids have Russian instructors and Russian everyone. So my parents were like, we need to find you a Russian instructor, so we basically, or at least Russian speaking. And so my instructor is this Armenian dude. He speaks Russian. He's pretty fun and fresh. And so I'm driving. Every single day that I have a driving lesson, he tells me how horrible I am of a driver. And I don't know why, but driving initially was so hard for me. So even though I did the required 6 hours, I did a couple more lessons because I was just oh my God, I can't drive. So it's getting closer and closer to the test, and the test that I took, I decided to take it in Simi Valley, and Simi Valley it's kind of a far drive from me, but all of my friends took it there, and they said that they passed, and it was super easy. The roads are super wide, and I felt okay, but at the same time, I felt so scared because since the permit exam, I forgot all the rules of the road because it's been a couple months, and you know when you have a driving instructor, they tell you, okay, turn left right now, turn right now, and you kind of forget subconsciously oh, you have to turn left when it's a green light, but you have to drive into the middle of the road first. And so I didn't really know when you're supposed to turn left and when you're supposed to turn right. And so this is when everything went wrong. The thing is, I knew how to do everything. I knew how to turn left, turn the wheel or whatever. But when? I had no idea. So I'm in school, it's like the day of my driving test. I ate nothing, and I literally just like drank a cold brew, and that gave me so much anxiety, plus the anxiety of my test, plus the anxiety of me not knowing the rules of the road. So I literally took time off school to do this, because obviously the DMV like doesn't like to work when there's no school. And so I get to the DMV. It's at Simi Valley. I have a 2-hour driving lesson first, and my driving instructor is like trash. Like, you can't drive. And I get to the DMV. When you're at the DMV and you have to take your driving test, there's a person who's going to be testing you. So that's this man, and he's like so mean. Everyone at the DMV that I've had an experience with is so mean. And so he's like, hi. And I'm like, hi, how are you? And he like interrupts me. He's like, okay, can you like turn on your blinker, like blah, blah, blah. So we're checking all of that, like all of that fun stuff. Like, we're checking my brakes, my headlights, like all of that. So he gets in the car. He's like, drive. And I'm driving like so slow because I don't really know how to drive that well. And I'm driving super slow, and he's like, you need to speed up. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, sorry, I'm just a little nervous. And I'm like pretending that the reason that I don't know how to drive is because I'm nervous. And so this is like when it all starts going wrong. So he tells me to turn left, and I'm waiting at the left turn for so long because I don't know when to turn left. Like, I didn't know at this point in my life that when there's a green light, you have to drive into the middle of the road and then turn left, because my driving instructor would always tell me when to go into the middle of the road, when to turn left. And so I'm like, and he's like, drive. And so I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying. And so then we get to an intersection, a 4-way intersection, which is basically when it's like, this is the road, it's like that, and there's cars coming from here and like from here. Oh my God, this was such a terrifying moment of my life. So he's like, turn left, and there was a car in front of me, and I was like, oh my God, that's so great, because I can just follow that car because they know what they're doing. That's illegal. You're not supposed to follow cars into an intersection, but I did it anyways. And they're turning left, and I follow them, and I almost got into a car accident because there was a car coming from the other direction. It was so scary, and the guy he's like, drive, like he's like, go, and he's like, and then afterwards he was like, oh, that was bad, that was really, really, really bad. And I'm basically like, I'm sitting there and I'm like dying, like I'm having anxiety just like run from my toes to my head. And I'm just like, sorry, I'm just like really nervous. It's not like I don't know the rules of the road. And I'm like, I promise I'm like trying my best. And so then at this point, I'm like, I know I failed. So I'm driving, there's a green light. And as I'm driving at like really high speed, like 40 miles per hour, because Simi Valley has higher speed limits than normal, the light turns yellow. And I'm like, should I speed up or should I slow down? And I decided to like push my foot on the brakes, but then I stopped after the line, and like people were like trying to cross the street and they couldn't cross the street because of me, and I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. And then he basically told me to like drive to the DMV. So then I was like, oh my God, I failed. And then I acted all surprised and all sad that I failed. Like, I knew that I was going to fail because I didn't know the rules of the road. I already knew that I failed when I almost killed both of us. So anyways, I'm sitting there. So the testing guy, he's like, you didn't pass this time, but like you need to like not be nervous and blah, blah, blah. And then he leaves. So my driving instructor gets in the car. He's like, I knew it. Like, you're such a bad driver. Like, blah, blah, blah. And so we're driving back, and he's like, you need to not have your nervous condition because, like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And, like, I get home, and then I start crying. And then I called my dad. And I was like, Dad, I failed my driving test. And then I called my mom, I was like, Mom, I failed. And she's like, oh no, I failed like my first 3 times too. And I was like, so it's genetic. Anyways, so then that night I decided to learn the rules of the road. I know, so brave. And it's actually super easy. Like, I don't know why I didn't know them. But I learned the rules of the road, and then this is the next time that I get to the DMV. This is a different DMV that I went to. I went to the one, I think, on Winnetka. And if I'm not mistaken, that DMV actually has the lowest pass rate. So I'm going to the one on Winnetka, and before that I had a 2-hour driving lesson with my driving instructor, and he's like, you're not gonna pass. Like, you're like, I'm scared that you're not gonna pass. Like, you're, like, what am I supposed to tell your parents? Like, they're gonna think that I'm a bad driving instructor, and like, blah, 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 blah. And so he's like, stop over here, and like, he makes me pull into this like 7-Eleven or something, like, you know those like weird plazas with like all of those strange stores. And this like 40-year-old man comes out of the store, and my driving instructor asks him for water, and I'm sitting there like on my phone, like I'm like what is going on? Like, is this what I'm paying you for? Like, okay. And so my driving instructor, he's like, that's my son. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And he's like, is he cute? And I'm like, how do you respond to that? Like, how do you respond to that? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm like a 16-year-old girl. Like, this is a 40-year-old man. Like, do I think he's cute? And I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't want to insult his son or anything like that. So I was like, yeah. And it made me so uncomfortable. And then I tried to like break the silence. I was like, so does he work at this store? And he's like, no, that's his store. He owns it. And I was like, oh, how impressive. Yeah. So yeah, so now we're going to the DMV. He's like, you need to calm down, like, or else you're not gonna pass. Like, what am I gonna tell your parents? Like, they're gonna, like, it's your fault if you pass. It's not my fault, but I can't tell that to your parents, and like, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm like, okay. And so I get to the DMV, and I'm like, okay, I need to pass this exam because I hate my driving instructor, and I don't want to spend any extra time with him that I need to. So that was kind of like what fueled me. And also over the summer, I have so many like volunteering things that I want to do that like require me to have a car, because like I cannot ask my mom to drive me around Los Angeles for the whole entire day. And my dad's gonna be in Moscow over the summer, so like I can't, like, who's gonna drive me? Myself. So I have to get my driving license. And I'm like, this is my second attempt, like I have to pass. And so I get to the DMV. This is the one on Winnetka. As I said, like, lowest passing rate. I get to the DMV. Everyone is so mean, like usual. The woman who is, like, my test... I still don't know what it's called. Like, the person who sits with you and, like, tests you. This time it's a woman, and I can tell that she's nice. Like, underneath it all... she's a nice person who really has your best interests at heart, but just the DMV made her a stone cold person. And the reason that I can see this is because she's like, I'm gonna be doing your driving exam today, and you just tell me if, like, blah blah blah. And she's like, do it when you feel ready. Like, I'm gonna tell you what to do, but you can't ask me any questions. And so she's like, okay. And then I'm driving, and then she tells me to turn left out of the DMV. And so I turn left, and there's like this like little street, and I was like, do you want me to turn left here? Because like I thought that we were supposed to be like going like further away from the DMV, if that makes sense. And she's like, no, I told you to turn left out of the parking lot. Keep going forward. And I'm like, okay, okay. And I'm like driving, and I'm like, and I'm scared. Like, my whole body's shaking. And I'm like praying. I'm like, dear Lord, please, please let me pass this test. Please let me, because I hate my driving instructor, and my parents are gonna yell at me. And And actually, the first time that I failed, my parents, like, didn't get mad at me because my mom failed her driving test, like, the first 3 times. So she's like, I totally get it. Like, it's fine. And so I'm driving and I'm like, don't let me fail, like, please God, like, I promise, like, I'm gonna wash the dishes every single night. I'm gonna help my brother do his homework. She's like, please let me pass my driving exam, okay? And so I'm driving and, like, I'm doing everything surprisingly well. It's like this weird force just took over my body and, like, knew how to drive. Like, I swear to God, like, I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm driving, I'm like, oh my God, I know how to drive, yes, yes, yes. And so I'm driving around, I'm cruising, and I, like, knew how to do all the left turns and, like, everything. Like, I knew the rules of the road, and I'm trying so hard not to look at the lady because her lipstick is, like, so overdrawn. It's, like, here, and you can tell, like, you can see that it's overdrawn, and it just made me laugh so hard, like, every single time I looked at her. And so, I keep driving, and then she's like, okay, pull into the DMV. And, I, like, pull into the DMV, and I'm trying to be all serious, and I'm, like driving. And she's like, okay, you passed. And I just went from, like, this to, like, oh my God, thank you. And I literally screamed. I was like, oh my God, thank you. Ah. And she literally just, like, said nothing. And she just left. Like, you're not gonna say, like, no problem, like, enjoy, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, at the DMV, do you have to go through training to, like, make you mean? I'm sorry, but, like, do they go through, like, specific, like, training and they tell them, like, oh, you're not allowed to be nice to people? Or, like, you're not allowed to say you're welcome. Like, you're not allowed to be polite. Like, you're not allowed to smile at people. Like, why is that a thing at the DMV? Like, why? And if you work at the DMV and you're a nice person, I believe that. But I just don't think that you work at the DMVs that I've been to. And so my driving instructor, he gets in the car, he's like, so did you pass? And I'm like, yeah. And guess how many mistakes I made, you guys? I made 3 mistakes. That is such a good score. So yeah. Passed my driving test. I have my driver's license now. And my car is coming on Monday. If you're wondering what kind of car I got, I'm getting a black Mini Cooper, obviously used, so that my insurance isn't like $500 a month. And basically my parents agreed to get me a car if I'm going to be financing my own insurance. So that means that I'm going to be working a lot more, but that's going to be a lot, it's going to be a lot easier for me now that I can drive myself. So, you know, I'm super excited about that. I'm gonna go to the gym like every single day. I'm so excited. And yeah, so, you know, I was really worried the first time that I didn't pass. Like, I felt so stupid. I felt like an actual idiot. Like, I got so mad at myself all the time. I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't pass. But honestly, it's okay. Like, a lot of people fail their driving test the first time. So if you failed once, twice, however many times, just know that a lot of people fail, and it's really scary, and everybody makes mistakes, and everybody has those days. And honestly, I'm really glad that I failed, because at the time, since I didn't know the rules of the road, I should not have been on the road. Like, I could have gotten hurt. I could have gotten someone else hurt. So, like, thank God I didn't pass. Because if I passed, ooh, that is not good. That is, like, not good at all. So, that is basically the story of how I failed my driving test. And I really, really hope that you enjoyed and you found this to be funny or entertaining. Thank you so much for watching if you got to this moment, and have an amazing night or day or whatever. So yeah, bye.